Chidera was gone, but her face was still in Eze's house. Days passed. The village stayed normal. People came to greet. Women came to borrow salt. Children ran in and out. But Eze's home changed. The first change was the quietness. Before, Chidera's quietness had felt peaceful, like a soft cloth on the body. Now the quietness felt empty, like a pot with no water. The fake one would sit and stare at the doorway for long moments, smiling faintly, as if listening to something Eze could not hear. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, Eze would wake and see her eyes open, staring into the darkness, and when he asked, "What are you doing?" she would answer softly, "I'm praying." But Eze knew it was not prayer, because prayer brings comfort, and her night watching brought cold. The second change was the way animals behaved. One morning, a chicken entered Eze's hut and began to flap wildly like it saw danger, then ran out. Another day, a goat refused to step into the compound and pulled its rope backward until it nearly choked itself. Eze's neighbor laughed and said, "Maybe your goat is stubborn." But Eze felt his stomach tighten, because in the village, animals often sense what humans ignore. Then, the third change came, the one that caught Eze's spirit. One morning, the fake Chidera woke up and moved around normally, but Eze noticed something. Her body looked lighter, not in weight, but in shape. He watched her carefully and his heart began to beat faster. Eze remembered clearly the way Chidera had held his hand and placed it on her belly, the way she smiled quietly, the way she said, "There is a child coming." He remembered the night he lay awake and prayed for that child, thanked God for that child. He remembered the small changes that had begun, the tenderness, the carefulness, the quiet joy in their home. Eze swallowed hard and stepped closer. "Chidera," he said slowly, and even saying the name in daylight felt bitter. "Your belly." The fake one turned and looked at him calmly. "What about it?" she asked. Eze's voice shook. "The child," he whispered. "Where is the child?" The fake one stared at him for a moment, then smiled faintly, like someone amused by a child's confusion. "Eze," she said gently, "there was never a child." Eze's whole body froze. "Don't say that," he whispered, and his eyes began to burn. "Don't play with me." The fake one shook her head slowly. "I'm not playing," she said. "You imagined it. People imagine many things when they are too happy." Eze felt like the floor was opening. He staggered backward and sat down hard. "No," he said, shaking his head. "It was real. She told me. I felt it. I prayed for it. It was real." The fake one's voice remained calm. "Eze," she said, "listen to yourself. You sound like a man chasing smoke." Eze looked at her with hatred so deep his eyes shook. "You are not her," he whispered. The fake one smiled again. "But I am here," she replied, "and she is not." That day, Eze walked out of his compound and did not know where he was going. He walked like a man with no skin, because shame had stripped him. He passed the market, heard women shouting prices, saw children running with small dried fish, smelled roasted corn, and yet none of it touched him. He sat under an old tree near the stream and stared at the water like he wanted it to tell him the truth. He didn't cry loudly. He simply sat, breathing, and inside him something old woke up, something that Chidera had tried to keep asleep, something called certainty. He knew now that he had chosen wrong that night. He knew now that his hesitation had fed the thing. He knew now that the child had been taken not because the child was weak, but because that thing did not like beginnings. It liked stealing futures. When Eze returned home later, Uche was there again, as if he had been waiting for weakness. Uche found Eze outside and asked, "Eze, you're walking like a man that lost money. Wetin happen?" Eze stared at him. "Uche," he said slowly, "leave my house." Uche laughed, acting surprised. Leave your house? So your wife now controls your mouth too? He joked. Eze stepped closer until their faces were near. Uche, he repeated, his voice low and hard. Leave my house. The laughter died in Uche's throat. He looked at Eze for a moment, then smiled thinly. All right, he said. No vex, I'm going. But as he walked away, Eze heard him mutter, some men don't appreciate what they have. That night, Eze did not sleep. He sat quietly, watching the fake one, watching her move, watching her smile, watching her pretend. Then he remembered something from the candle story elders used to tell children, that the easiest way to catch a spirit wearing skin is not to fight it with strength, but to corner it with truth. So Eze began to speak, not shouting, not insulting. He began to tell stories. He told the fake one about the first day he met Chidera. He told her about the way Chidera used to respond when he teased her. He told her about the small private things, the small jokes, the small moments. He did it like a man talking to his wife, but his eyes were watching for cracks. At first, the fake one answered smoothly. Yes, she would say, I remember. But the more Eze talked, the more the fake one began to answer too perfectly, too cleanly, too quickly. And Eze realized something. Real memory is messy. Real memory has laughter and irritation and small wrong details. And people argue about it. But the fake one's memory was like a rehearsed story. It was too smooth, too controlled, too empty. Eze stopped suddenly and looked at her. When I called you my private name, he said quietly, what did you always say back to me? The fake one smiled faintly. Why are you asking? Eze's eyes hardened. Answer. The fake one's smile remained. You call me many sweet names, she said softly. My love, my wife, my joy. Eze's chest tightened. He stood up slowly. I don't know, he whispered. You don't know because you are not her. The fake one's face changed slightly then, not in shape, but in expression. The calmness tightened into anger. Eze, she said, you are starting to talk too much. Eze nodded slowly. Yes, he said, because silence is what brought you in. The fake one laughed softly, but the laugh was colder now. You want your wife back, she said. Do you think you can just call her name like a man calling a goat? Eze's throat burned. Where is she? He asked again. The fake one leaned forward slightly. If you want her, she said, you will have to go where names are kept. Eze's heart jumped. Where? The fake one smiled like a teacher. Ask her mother, she whispered. That old woman knows the road. Eze froze, because he had never told the fake one about Chidera's mother. Not like that, not with details. And yet, the fake one said it confidently, as if she had always known. Eze understood then that the thing did not only steal faces, it listened, it learned, it collected information like a thief collecting keys. Before sunrise, Eze left his hut quietly. He did not take a horse. He did not take any modern thing. He took only a small bag with kola nuts and a calabash of water, because in the village, when you are going to meet elders, you go with respect. He walked on the bush path, through tall grasses that brushed his legs, past small farms, past the stream where women usually fetched water, and the whole time the morning birds sang as if he was not walking toward a storm. Eze's legs ached, but he did not stop, because fear and regret can push a man farther than strength. By midday, he reached the part of the land where Chidera's mother lived, near a small grove that villagers respected, because they said the trees there had seen too many things. Chidera's mother was called Mama Nnenna. She was not a witch, but she was not foolish. Her eyes were sharp, and her voice carried the kind of authority that doesn't need shouting. When Eze entered her compound and greeted, she looked at him long before answering. Eze, she said slowly, your shadow is heavy. What did you bring to my door? Eze knelt respectfully, offered the kola nuts, then lifted his face like a man carrying shame on his head. Mama, he began, and his voice broke. I broke the rule. Mama Nnenna's face tightened, but she did not insult him. She only nodded slowly, like someone hearing news she feared would come. Sit, she said. Eze sat on the ground. Mama Nnenna looked into the distance and spoke like an elder teaching a lesson. She said, "Some children are born with an echo, not a twin in the womb, not a sister in the house, but an echo that follows their name. Most echoes fade as the child grows because the world is noisy and the echo cannot stand loud life. But some stay. They wait. They hide in the quiet places. They grow in the dark. And the only way they enter a home is through a name called at the wrong hour." She turned her eyes to Eze. "Chideras' echo has been hungry since she was a child. That is why I warned him. That is why she warned you." Eze's hands shook. "Mama," he pleaded, "help me. My wife is gone. The child is gone." Mama Nnenna's face softened slightly at the word child. "So, it took the future," she murmured. "That is how it feeds." Eze bowed his head. "I want to bring her back," he said. Mama Nnenna nodded slowly. "You can," she said, "but it will not be easy, and you will not do it with shouting. You will do it with truth. The echo can copy face, it can copy voice, it can copy tears, but it cannot copy the private language of love. It cannot copy the small things that only two souls know." Eze's eyes lifted. "Mama," he said quickly, "I tested it with our private name and it failed." Mama Nnenna nodded. "Good," she said. "Then you still have a rope, but you must pull it the right way." Eze leaned forward. "Tell me what to do." Mama Nnenna stood and walked to her small shrine corner. Not a frightening shrine, but a place where she kept old things, dried leaves, a small bowl, and a white chalk stone. She picked the chalk and came back. "Tomorrow," she said, "when the sun stands in the middle of the sky, you will return to your compound. You will gather witnesses, not the whole village, only elders and women with clean mouths, people who don't mock sacred things. You will draw a circle with chalk at your doorway. You will stand inside it and call your wife, not by her public name, but by your private name for her. Then the two will come again, because the echo cannot resist being chosen. It craves it. When they appear, you will not rush, you will not shake, you will not let fear enter your mouth. You will ask the question only your real wife can answer. If your heart is steady, the truth will pull her back. If you doubt again, you will lose her completely." Eze swallowed. "And if the echo refuses?" he asked. Mama Nnenna's eyes narrowed. "It will not refuse," she said. "It will pretend, it will trick, it will cry, it will threaten, but it will come. Because this is not only about your wife, it is about pride. The echo wants to prove it can replace a life and still be loved." Eze nodded, feeling both fear and hope. By evening, he returned to his compound, walking like a man carrying fragile glass inside his chest. The fake Chidera was sitting outside, calm as ever. When she saw him, she smiled. "You went to see my mother," she said softly. Eze froze. "You followed me?" he asked. She smiled wider. "You can't hide from me," she replied. "I'm in your home." Eze did not answer her. He walked inside. He waited. The next day at midday, Eze called 2 elders and 1 respected woman who had delivered many children in the village. He did not call gossipers. He did not call Uche. He called people who understood that some matters are not for laughter. They came quietly, curious, concerned. Eze explained in simple words that something strange had entered his home and he needed witnesses for what he was about to do. The elders looked at one another, then nodded slowly. Because in the village, elders have heard enough stories to know that not everything is a joke. Mama Nnenna arrived too, walking slowly with her staff, her wrapper tied firmly, her eyes steady. The fake Chidera watched her arrive, and for the first time, the fake smile twitched slightly, because truth has a smell spirits don't like. Mama Nnenna stood by the doorway and drew a circle with white chalk. She spoke a few quiet words and instructed Eze to stand inside. Eze stepped into the circle, breathing hard. The oil lamp inside the hut flickered, though it was midday. A wind moved through the compound, though trees were still. Then a voice answered. From inside the hut, the fake Chidera replied gently, "My husband." And from behind the compound, near the bush path, another voice answered softly, "Stop calling me that. You want to spoil me." Eze's heart jumped. The elders gasped. The woman covered her mouth. From the bush path, Chidera stepped forward slowly, looking thin, dusty, but real, like someone who had been carried through fear and returned. Her eyes locked on Eze, and Eze felt tears rise, but he refused to cry. He could not afford weakness now. At the same time, the fake Chidera stepped out of the hut, calm, beautiful, steady, wearing Chidera's face like a cloth. She stood beside Eze, just outside the chalk circle, smiling softly at the witnesses like a good wife. Two Chideras stood in daylight. The village itself seemed to hold its breath. Mama Nnenna pointed at her staff. "Now," she said, "ask." Eze swallowed and looked at both of them. He spoke slowly, steadying his voice. "When I first called you Nkem, what did you do to my chest, and what did I say after?" The fake one answered quickly. Too quickly. "I smiled," she said softly, "and you laughed." Mama Nnenna's eyes narrowed. The real Chidera's face tightened in irritation, the way Eze remembered. "I slapped your chest small, and I said, 'Stop that thing.' And you said, 'I will spoil you until you get tired of fighting me.' And you laughed because I was pretending to be angry." The elders murmured. The respected woman nodded slowly, like someone hearing truth. The fake Chidera's smile disappeared. For the first time, her eyes looked empty. Eze's voice became stronger. "That is my wife," he said, pointing at the real one. The fake one's face twisted slightly, not into ugliness, but into anger. "Eze," she said, and her voice began to carry more than one tone, like two people speaking through one mouth. "You chose me already." Eze shook his head. "I made a mistake," he said, "and I am correcting it." The fake one laughed, and the laughter sounded wrong in daylight. "Correction?" she repeated. "Do you correct a spilled soup by gathering it back into the pot?" Mama Nnenna stepped forward and lifted her chalk hand. "Enough," she said. The fake one's eyes flashed. "Old woman," she hissed, and for a moment the air turned cold again. Mama Nnenna did not fear. "You are an echo," she said. "You have no right to carry a full life. Return to where you wait." The fake one tried to step forward, but the chalk circle held. It was not magic like movies. It was authority. It was rules older than pride. Rules the village had forgotten, but the earth remembered. The fake one screamed suddenly, and the scream was not Chidera's scream. It was a raw sound, like wind dragging metal. The elder stepped back. The respected woman fell to her knees, praying. Then, as quickly as it came, the fake one began to shrink, not in size, but in presence, like a shadow being pulled away from sunlight. Her face blurred slightly, her voice cracked, and her body became lighter, thinner, like smoke losing its shape. Before it fully vanished, it looked at Eze one last time and smiled, a terrible smile that carried a warning. "You will remember me," it whispered. "Every time you doubt her, I will be near." And then it disappeared, leaving only a cold smell in the air, like damp earth. Eze stood trembling. Chidera stepped forward slowly. For a moment, neither of them spoke, because some pain is too heavy for quick words. Then Chidera looked at him, and her eyes filled with tears she refused to drop. She softly said, "You broke my trust." Eze fell immediately to his knees. "I know," he whispered, "I know." Chidera stared at him and shook her head slowly. "You didn't just call my name," she said. "You called doubt into our home, and doubt entered like a visitor and sat down." Eze's shoulders shook. "Forgive me," he begged. "I was weak. I listened to laughter." Chidera looked away briefly, and her voice broke slightly. "And our child," she whispered. Eze's face collapsed. "I'm sorry," he said again, and the words tasted like ash. Mama Nnenna spoke quietly from behind them. "Some things are not returned," she said. "The echo feeds on beginnings. You brought your wife back, but the child that was taken cannot be carried back the same way." Chideras' tears finally fell. Silent tears, not loud crying, because some grief does not perform. Eze's heart felt like it was being crushed because he wanted to give anything to undo that loss, but life does not rewind because a man regrets. In the days that followed, Eze's home became peaceful again, but it was a different peace. It was not the careless peace of before. It was the careful peace of people who have seen darkness and survived. Eze stopped sitting at the palm wine joint for long. He stopped laughing at dangerous jokes. When Uche came around again, smiling, trying to pretend nothing happened, Eze stood in front of his compound and told him plainly, "Your mouth nearly killed my home." Uche tried to laugh it off, but Eze's eyes were hard. "Leave," Eze said. "If you come again with poison, you will meet elders and shame." Uche walked away, angry, but fear sat behind his anger because he had seen something in daylight that proved the world was deeper than his jealousy. Months passed. Chidera healed slowly. Eze became more gentle, more present, more careful. And though they grieved the child they lost, they also learned something the village would talk about for years, not as gossip, but as a warning. People began to tell the story of Eze and Chidera as a lesson to young couples, that a home can be destroyed not only by enemies, but by friends who smile with envy, and by husbands who think proving a point is more important than protecting a promise. And the elders of the village would end the story with the same warning Mama Nnenna gave, that when love gives you a rule, it is not always control. Sometimes it is protection, and a man who breaks protection to impress laughter is a man who will cry when laughter has gone home. So, if you were Eze, would you have listened to your wife's warning, or would you have tested it because of pride, because of mockery, because of one jealous friend who wanted to see you fall? If you enjoyed this story, don't let it end here. Subscribe to African Folktales by Ray for more deep stories that carry wisdom, mystery, and the secrets of the night. And tell me in the comments, would you call her name after midnight? Yes or no?